You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, how are you? Today is a very, very hot day in Florida. Quite miserable, actually, for this Canadian girl. Today we're going to be talking about one of the very negative effects that we have and endure when we love someone struggling with addiction. And this is, we talk about it a lot. This is a symptom of really being lied to, of being constantly manipulated. And it is the result of a lot of deception. And it's the feeling of going crazy. And I know, for those of you who have been listening for a couple of years now, you're like, Michelle, really? Crazy again? Yep, I'm here. Because I park here a lot with you because I think this job, when I often, grab my phone, go out my backyard and record one of these podcasts or I'm writing for you, I often think it's me against addiction and we're fighting for you. Like, I want to take on addiction for you so that I can do this battle. Because I remember loving someone, and I'm going to mention a really personal story today, who was a great guy, incredibly talented, like way more talented than I am. And he struggled with addiction, and I felt so alone, and I wanted someone to fight for me. And my parents, neither one of them struggled with addiction. They didn't know what they were dealing with. And plus, I kept it a secret for a really long time from so many people for over 9 years because I wanted to protect him. I didn't want them to tell me that I needed to leave him or think of me as weak for staying, right? I wanted them to like him because the more people that loved him and liked him, maybe the better chances he would have of getting sober because he'd finally realize how loved he was, right? I thought that if I smothered him with enough love and I found the troops and I rallied the community and we all loved him too, that would heal his addiction. And truthfully, a lot of self-help books and gurus and whatever make you believe that love heals everything. And I think sometimes, if I'm being honest, I just have a little bit of beef with that. Particularly when you love someone struggling with addiction, because you're like, wait a second, I am loving. In fact, my love is not only healing them, it's killing me. Love is doing the exact opposite of healing in this situation. And so whenever someone says that, I just always, I see it on mugs or t-shirts or whatever, I kind of cringe a little because I don't think it's applicable to everyone and everything in all situations. So we do feel very, very crazy because addiction, and you guys remember, we think of addiction as a third party, right? We are individuals. We love another individual. And then there's the mistress of our relationship, and that's the addiction. So we do this. We separate the person from the addiction because we love the person, not their addiction. It's just a very healthy way of recognizing and realizing that we are in love with good people, most of us. There are some of us in this community who, unfortunately, addiction has taken over their lives so much that they are a shell of the human being that they once were. And you begin to recognize their natural state less and less, right? And their decisions and choices become criminal, painful, super unhealthy, really damaging. And then you sit there and you go, you know what? This isn't a good person I'm dealing with anymore. They once were really good, but they've done such cruel, horrible things that I can't safely consider this person a good person anymore, right? Because this disease is progressive. It takes over the person you love, and unless they get sober and stay sober and continue to choose a life of sobriety every day, it progresses and progresses, and then the person that we once loved slowly morphs into a completely different human being, until one day you wake up and you go, I don't actually recognize any part of you. I get these very small glimpses of who you are, but I don't recognize you at all. And I would say that's true in my situation. It's been, oh my gosh, I don't even know, well over 10 years. And when I have spoken to my ex-husband, I don't recognize any part of him whatsoever. And I've known him since I was 15 years old. So this disease steals away the people that we love if they don't get a grip and get control of their own lives, which is incredibly sad. So when I'm doing these podcasts, or I'm trying to, create a very safe community for us, a very safe and small community for us, I like to think of myself as the person who is helping you take on addiction. And when you're too weak, or when you're too sad, or you're too tired, or you're too exhausted, I'm like, fine, get behind me. I'll do this work for you, because I understand exactly how you feel when you feel alone. I was so run down, so tired, so lonely. I just wanted a friend. I wanted a family member. I wanted someone to come and say, I just need to sit. Can you please help? Can you please help me? And I want to help you. And that is not coming from a place of me. It's not coming from an unhealthy place of me wanting to be your savior. I don't need you or want you to give me credit. I just want to be your friend, and I want to be your safe spot. And I also want to be your backbone sometimes and be like, no. Let me be the voice in your head that sets you right, that sits there and says, addiction has got you all tangled up and manipulated and swayed in a way that's unhealthy. Let me be the opposite, the antithesis of the voice of addiction. Let me be the voice of loving you and caring for you and nurturing you and healing you and setting you right. And so addiction tries to convince you that you're crazy, tries to convince you that somehow, some way, whatever mess is going on in your life right now, that you have a responsibility to fix it, and that you are the main person who caused it. And so you spend all of your time and energy and efforts trying to solve an issue that was never yours to begin with. You've been trying so hard to a point of complete exhaustion, maybe to a point of damaging your mental health. Maybe you've gotten sick physically. Maybe you've let your life deteriorate. I know for me, I was on my path to a very promising career. I was the youngest executive at a Fortune 500 company, and completely blew my entire career at that young age because I was consumed with trying to help my then fiance get sober. So I've forgiven myself, and it's not embarrassing to think about anymore. It doesn't cause me to have cringe or have pain because I've forgiven myself for it. But at the time, it was such a naive move where I was like, oh, if I just am all consuming in my efforts to prove to him that he has a drinking problem, to convince him that this has been an issue for him for a long time, and that I love him, and that I'm going to help get him sober, help send him to AA, get him into rehab, work with his family, do all of the things, right, that we think we should do. If I just do that, then I can go back to my career at a later point. But I just need to get him set up right. I'm going to put my life on pause, on hold, because he's worth it. He's my everything, right? We have a future together, and we love each other. And we're meant to be together. We're soulmates. And so I, of course, should do this, because any loving fiance, girlfriend, wife would make sacrifices for their loved one. And now looking back on that situation a long time ago, I think to myself, that's very, very, very sweet and very kind and very empathetic. But in actuality, nothing I did could have possibly helped or convinced him that he needed to change, that he had a problem, that he was causing destruction and pain and hurt, that he could be so much better if he just got sober. There was nothing I could do, because he didn't want to get better, right? So part of this battle with this disease is convincing us that we are the ones responsible, to keep us in that cycle of trying so hard, trying this, trying that, reading this book, going to that meeting, blah, 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 working harder and harder, because it keeps us preoccupied, because it keeps us busy, because it keeps us off their case. It's a trick. Addiction is full of tricks. And when we get nowhere, because the definition of crazy is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, we feel crazy because we keep trying so hard to get them sober, and we're not seeing any results in the long run. It always ends up with heartbreak. So I'm going to give you a perfect example of when I felt my craziest, a moment. I've written a book. We're trying to get it out to you by December, but this story is in the book. So I used to live in Boston, and we had a beautiful studio apartment. It was like 700 square feet, had big windows that opened up to over the city. And I loved it. I love Boston. I think it's such a romantic city. It reminds me a little bit of England. And we conveniently, ironically, lived above a liquor store. True story. Still there, actually. When I was visiting colleges with my daughter, I saw it. We walked down the street. It is still there. And my ex-husband, who was my husband at the time, would, at this point, I think in his addiction, he was drinking, I believe, publicly, like in front of me, every weekend. Now, there were many times where he played hooky from work to go to a bar, and I would come home, and he would be home from work, and I'd detect like a little slur in his voice, and I'd ask him, I'd say, "Have you been drinking today? I thought you were at work." And he'd say, "No, I was at work," and get all upset at me, right? Well, then I'd go and find like beer bottles or liquor bottles in the recycling bin. Or I would find a receipt from a bar. Or I'd talk to a coworker and they'd say, "No, he didn't show up on Tuesday." And so all these little clues, right? But I still felt sort of crazy. Like, wait, he swore to me. He promised me. He said he'd take a lie detector test, but he wasn't drinking. So are those the neighbor's bottles? Or is that like some random strangers who was walking down the street and they just were drinking a beer on the street or a liquor bottle or whatever and just happened to put them in our recycling bin? Like, these are the things that you convince yourself because you want to believe them. You don't want to believe that someone who loves you could lie to you like that, could make you not only lie to you, but make you feel bad for accusing them. Right? Like, that was part of it, is like you feel guilty for even asking the question because they make you intimidated. They have a great way of making you feel scared. So you won't ask, right? So you won't call them on the carpet. So you do this one over on yourself where you're like, well, maybe the receipt that I found, maybe they weren't really like having alcohol. Maybe they just had like a salad or a sandwich and they just went to a familiar place that they know. You know, like you at least for me, I had a tendency to always try to convince myself that the truth was not really the truth, right? And so we were living in this apartment. He was committed out loud to only drinking Fridays and Saturdays. That was our mutual agreement. And you guys know that we all bargain, right? We bargain with their addiction. We try to minimize it, or we try to like convince ourselves that we're in control by negotiating, by saying, okay, only liquor, not or only beer, not hard liquor, or maybe not hard liquor but marijuana, or maybe not cocaine but like whatever. We try to like finagle and negotiate so that we have a sense of a say, right? We have some kind of influence, which is just an illusion too. But Fridays and Saturdays were his drinking night. So I think there was I know there was one instance where I came home, and it's too long to go into this podcast, but basically he was drinking in the middle of the day, had called in sick, which I did not know, and was wasted, and threw up, sorry, I know that's gross, at the bottom of the stairs of our apartment complex. And I knew it was him, and he knew it was him, obviously, but like we were both pretending it wasn't, because that's a new level of like bad, right? You guys know, have you ever been in that position where they've done something so bad, like a new low, they've reached a new low where you're like, this, I don't even want to admit this. Like, I don't even want to think this is true. So he threw up at the bottom of the stairs, and we lived in a building with other people, so they saw it. It was disgusting. I can't remember for the life of me how it got. I must have. Knowing me, I probably cleaned it up myself. But anyways, it was a new low and humiliating. And so he said, all right, that's it. Like, I'm going to try not drinking. So I said, okay, great. I am so on board. Praise Jesus. Awesome. Woohoo. Way to go. I support this. Let's do this. Yes, 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 please. So it's a Friday, and I'm cooking dinner. I'm cooking a roast, and I'm cutting up the carrots to put in a crock pot. And I open the fridge to get something. I don't remember what. And there was a case of non-alcoholic beer. And my heart sunk to my stomach because I thought it was beer. And then I looked at the label, and I was like, it said non-alcoholic beer. I won't even name the brand. Doesn't matter. So I called out to him because he was sitting on the couch watching television. And I said, hey, so is this what we're doing now? We're doing non-alcoholic beer? And he's like, yeah, I thought I'd try something new. It helps me. And I don't know about you guys, but there's a whole bunch of non-alcoholic brands now. This was back in the day, but now they have like non-alcoholic champagne and non-alcoholic whiskey and tequila and wine. It's amazing. Anyways, so I thought, okay, if this is what we're going to do, then I think this might work. Okay, as long as there's no alcohol, how can it be bad? All of a sudden your mind just goes into justifying, rationalizing, seeing if it's okay with you, checking in with yourself, like, how do you feel about this? You know what I'm saying? When you find something new, you discover something that throws you off a little bit, but then you kind of go, okay, your mind starts doing calculations. So that's what I was doing. So I went back to cutting up the carrots, and then I realized, I forgot to get the thing out of the fridge that I originally went into the fridge to get. I wish I could remember it. I wrote it in the book. I just can't remember it now. So anyways, I opened the fridge, and you guys, I noticed I noticed that when I went and leaned in to grab the thing off of the shelf, I noticed one of the caps on the top of the beer bottle was slightly off. Almost like it had just been like resting at the top of the bottle. And I was like, what? Did he take a swig and then like put it back? And then I looked around and at all the rest of the case of non-alcoholic beer. And some of them were already missing because he had been drinking them that night. And I looked, all of the tops of the bottles are resting or look slightly off. And then it hit me. He removed all of the tops of the bottles, emptied the bottles out of the non-alcoholic beer, and poured alcoholic beer in them. Put them back in the case, rested the tops back on, put them in the fridge to trick me. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because so many times we rationalize and convince ourselves that we are the ones going crazy. And this is proof. The moral of this story is trust your gut. If you feel like something is off, if you feel like something isn't right, if you think it's not on the up and up, it's not. And you don't need beer bottles with messed up caps to prove it. Trust your gut. You are the smartest person in this relationship right now because you are the most honest person in this relationship. You are the one that's actually doing the research to try and figure out how to save your relationship, save yourself, save your loved one. You are the responsible one staying sober, taking care of your life, showing up on time. You are the one that's sitting here saying, I am committed. I don't know about you, but I'm showing up and committing. I'm doing everything in my power. What are you doing? You are the one that has the right to say, I don't believe you, or this isn't true, or that's a lie, or I'm rejecting that. You are the one that has every right or rhyme and reason to say that, believe it, and trust yourself. This disease will do anything to trick you into believing that it's okay. That what they're doing, that you're wrong and they're right. And the stories I have heard in the years and years that I have been doing this about the lengths and depths that people struggling with addiction will go to try and convince. I'm sure you have some crazy stories yourself of they'll look you directly in the eye, swear up and down, lie detector test, look through my things, whatever. And you sit there and you go, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy. They're telling the truth. This is all my fault. What else have I fabricated? What else have I made up a bigger deal of that isn't that big of a deal? What else have I been wrong about? Here I am, lovingly, as your friend, as your advocate, as your biggest cheerleader, saying to you, honey, you have not been wrong. You are not crazy. Everything you are feeling, thinking, and going through is real. You stand your ground. You reject all of the lies and manipulation that addiction is trying to convince you of. And here's the most important part. You don't need proof. You don't need empty beer bottles. You don't need proof to prove they have a problem. You don't need proof to say they've been having an affair. You don't need proof to say they're trading one addiction for another. You don't need proof that they're lying. You don't. You don't need to waste your time trying to prove your case in a court of law because you are already fully equipped to know. You are adulting as the only adult in your relationship right now. So you've already won. Walk out of the courtroom. Retire that role. You are not the judge. You are not the jury. You are not the lawyer. You are literally walking out of the courtroom and saying, I know the truth. I don't need to play this game of tennis back and forth where I, try to prove you wrong, then you try to prove me wrong, then I say something back to you that says you're wrong, and then No, put the racket down, walk out of the courtroom, and rest. Rest, knowing that you know the truth. And then make decisions based off of that. I want you, for the next week, to go through your week making decisions off of the truth that you know. Don't look for proof. Don't wait for long conversations where you give them the opportunity for them to change your mind that you're wrong. Don't do that anymore. Just sit there and go, okay, this is my life. This is the picture I find myself in. Now, what decisions do I need to make for my future that will help based off of the truth, based off of what's really, really going on? Operate from that standpoint. Put all of your energy, let me back up. Remove all of the energy that you've been putting into this disease to build a case and volleying back and forth in this tennis match. Remove all that energy. Stop that energy right now. Reserve it for you. Reserve it for strength and courage for you. Reserve it for the decisions that you're going to make for your future based off of the truth. And that is called empowerment. When you do that, when you stop the shenanigans of being distracted, like we talked about at the beginning, addiction wants you to be distracted, so it stays off its case, it leaves it alone. You leave it alone. Take all that energy and put it towards you and your decisions without looking for proof. You are going to feel in control and empowered immediately. And you don't owe anyone any explanations of your change of behavior. You don't owe anyone anything. You don't need to justify your disengagement. You don't need to explain why you're not partaking in this game anymore. You don't need to make a big exit speech when you leave the courtroom saying, that's it. I mean, if you want to, go for it, if that's what makes you happy. But everything, all the time and energy that you've put into trying to fix or trying to prove their problems, just say, I can't fix it, and I know they've got problems, and I know they're lying. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to disengage. I'm going to put that towards me. I'm going to not wait around for them to tell me the truth on where they've been. I know that they've been drinking. I know that they've been up to no good. And I know I can decide to make a decision or I can decide what I'm going to do with my night based on that. So let's get practical with this, right? What am I talking about right then and there? Let's say, for example, it's the evening and they're due to come home from work. And you're waiting around for them to go out to dinner so that you can... Actually, I'll give you a real example that happened to me because I think that's easier to do. Back in the day when I only had 2 kids, I loved going out to eat, mainly because I was tired of cooking. So there was this new restaurant that opened up called Ted's. I don't know if Ted's Montana Grill. And it was bison. Ted is Ted Turner, who used to own CNN. And he came up with these restaurants where they served bison burgers, okay? Because he has bison farms, I guess. I don't know. Who cares? Why did I just talk about that? I don't know. Work with me here. So I said, let's meet up after you go. I'm home with the kids. Why don't we meet at Ted's after work? And so he was like, great, I'll meet you there at whatever time. So I was like, great. So I got the kids dressed, loaded them up in the car, was so excited, got to the restaurant. He was running late, I guess. So we were seated. I ordered a milkshake, got the kids some water, and we just waited and waited. And I kept calling and he wasn't answering. And I kept calling, and you know what I'm talking about when you sit there and your little red flag, your little alarm bell goes off and says, something isn't right. what's wrong? I don't know. I can't imagine what's really happening, but something is not right. Something's wrong. He's not answering. Why is he not answering? So waited for 10 minutes. Waiter came around. I've got 2 hungry kids. I'm like, okay, I guess we'll order for them. I'll wait because that's polite. 20 minutes. I'm calling. He's still not answering. 30 minutes. So this is the point where if I were a very sick person, which I was, I would sit there, refuse to eat any food myself because it would be impolite and I would wait for him. But because he wasn't coming and it had been 30 minutes, I would get up from the table, pack up the diaper bags, get the kids in the strollers, leave the restaurant, and wait for him outside, which is, I'm walking you through exactly what I did because I was a very unhealthy person, and wait for him outside on the bench for a little bit longer, little bit meaning 15, 20 minutes. So now we're almost an hour into this situation, and call and stalk and stalk and call and stalk and stalk. All the while becoming more and more unglued, becoming more resentful, feeling like a big fat loser because why am I putting up with this? Why do I continue to deal with somebody who doesn't want to spend time with me? And I'm chasing them down, trying to spend time with me and the kids. I'm also comparing myself to everyone at the restaurant and thinking, oh my gosh, all these other couples look so happy. They look so engaged with each other. I know that woman in the corner over there doesn't have to deal with this with the guy. And somebody came up to me while I was waiting on that bench, and one of the children was having a meltdown and was like, "Are you okay?" And I smiled, you guys, and said, "Oh, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm just waiting for my husband. He's running a little late from work." You guys, I smiled, which was such a lie because I wanted to cry. I wanted that person to sit down on the bench and let it go. Let the secret out that I was alone, that I felt like a single mom, that I was desperate for my husband to love me as much as he loved alcohol, that I was frustrated and angry that he kept choosing his alcohol over his 2 adorable high-maintenance kids. Why is he constantly living his life like a single human being when he was married with children and had responsibilities? What about us? That's what I wanted to say. But instead I smiled. Oh, no, I'm fine. We're good. Just waiting. Come on. Well, after a long time, I got in my minivan and drove back home. And I was livid and pathetic and sad. I was mad at myself and I was mad at him. I was just mad because I was hurt. Because hurt people usually are mad people, right? Well, it turns out the entire time he was in the restaurant next door at the bar drinking. The entire time. He went to the restaurant. He just changed his mind and decided to go be by himself and get drunk. Right next door. Probably could see me from where he was sitting waiting for him on the bench. Probably had a perfect view. Now what's even makes me even more sick is I found that out and didn't leave him. And didn't say, that's it, we're done, I'm out. That's really weird. Nobody should ever have to tolerate that level of humility. This future has no hope. Our marriage is over. This is it. I didn't. That was not even close to the breaking point for me. Hundreds and hundreds of more situations like that had to occur in order for me to get to the point where I was ready to leave. Which is why I don't ever judge anyone for staying. You'll never hear me trying to convince you to leave because I know, just like trying to convince an alcoholic to get sober, trying to convince a woman or a man that she should leave a marriage, you'll leave if you want to leave when you want to leave, period. Nobody should be influencing you. Anyway, you have to own that decision yourself. I'm just here as your advocate to say, listen, you are not crazy. trust your gut. You are an incredibly intelligent human being. And don't judge yourself. Don't judge yourself for, like I did in that restaurant, feeling pathetic and like a big loser, because I was just a young girl who wanted so badly to keep her family together. And I don't judge myself for staying with him because I was in love with him. And I don't judge myself for loving him because he was a great guy. Like, he had it all. You know, he was a great guy. And there was lots of people that loved him in his lifetime. You know, I just wanted to believe that he would get better. And he didn't. And he kept making that choice. I kept holding on to hope. And then when the hope ended, when I finally had a moment, and I go into great detail about that in the book, you know, and I think I've talked a lot about it on this podcast, then it was an easy decision to leave. You know, then it was a no-brainer. Then I was like, okay, I got this. I don't have anything figured out. I don't know how the hell I'm going to survive off of no money and no friends and 3 kids and no education. But I'll figure it out. I had faith in myself. I knew that I'm a strong person. This disease had turned me into a heck of a fighter. I had all the tools I needed because I was not ready to bow down and admit defeat and let addiction walk all over me. Look, I wasn't sure if I was going to leave or stay, but like hell, I was going to let addiction boss me around. I mean, I didn't necessarily take on my husband. I took on this disease. And I was like, look, he might not fight you, but I sure as heck will. You might be able to manipulate him, but you're not going to manipulate me anymore. You're the real thing I'm fighting against. And I will take you down. Or, the other way of looking at it is, you will not take me down. Now, unfortunately, addiction won with my ex-husband. But I got out. I got out alive. I got out better. And I turned addiction, which was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and the worst thing that ever happened to the man I loved, into the best thing that ever happened to me. I took control of my own story, of my own narrative, and said, this ship is sinking. And you know what? I'm not going down with it. And I'm saving my 3 babies. And I'm putting life vests on them, and we're jumping ship. And we're swimming to the shore. And I don't care how hard I have to work. I don't care how long it takes me. I don't care what sacrifices or scary storms I have to face ahead. I am getting off the ship, and I am saving my kids, and we are out. And that struggle from deciding to jump off the ship to the shore was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, which is why you will never hear me minimize the idea of leaving. I will never lie to you and say, oh, it's just a simple choice. No. It is gut-wrenching work. And do you know what? I would do it again and again and again, because not only were the results of all my hard work magnificent for me and a huge payoff for my 3 kids, but I grew. That struggle forced me to grow into the woman that I knew I could be, that I knew somewhere deep inside of me that I knew I could do better. I knew there was something better. I knew that this was not my best life. I knew that I, as a person, had work to do. I had change to make, and that I could achieve more, not monetarily or, whatever, but just emotionally, that there was a higher level to reach than what I was feeling every day loving someone struggling with addiction. And so I, in a leap of faith, jumped off the ship and said, screw it. Come on, guys, kiddos, get on my back. Hold on tight to mommy, because we are in for the swim of our life, the struggle of our life. And for those of you that know, I had to hide in hotels under a fake name. I had to give up every single cent and possession that I had to come clean with everyone and tell the truth about how damaged and out of control my life had become, what a sham my marriage was, how I had gone around the neighborhood and acted like I had everything together and I had nothing together. It was all falling apart. How all those smiles that I had been smiling for years were all lies because I was afraid of judgment. I was afraid of persecution. I was afraid of asking for help. I was afraid no one would show up. I was afraid no one would care. I was afraid of feeling even more alone than I was already feeling. And once I busted through all of those fears and said, okay, this is it. This is it. This is who I am. And what I mean by that is, I had to my stepdad nailed all of our windows shut at one point. I had restraining orders and ended up in courtrooms with strippers, which is a whole nother story. But anyways, I didn't become a stripper, but I was in a courtroom with strippers who were also trying to get restraining orders off on customers who were stalking them. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it's very common. Side note. And so I had to my stepdad nailed down the windows, and I had to change the locks on my doors, which was expensive. And of course, the locksmith pulls up to the house with a giant van with massive letters, massive font saying, "Locksmith." And I was like, oh my God. And I know my neighbors. I lived in a nosy Nelly neighborhood where they all were like peeping through windows and like loving gossiping. So I'm like, oh, I know this is making the newsletter. I know. And so, of course, I started getting phone calls. Do you need help? What's going on? And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I need help. I'm in a house alone by myself with 3 young kids, scared for my life. Yeah, if there's ever a time where I need raise my hand and say, yeah, can you please watch out your windows for me? Can you please call on me to make sure that I'm alive and okay? That was the time. I thought, screw it, what else do I have to lose here? I've lost my family, I've lost my husband, I've lost any money that I possibly had, I lost all my credit. I've lost everything except my little kids and me. That's it. That's all I've lost, that's all I've lost. So why not? It was my personal rock bottom. And I said to them, yeah, this is my life. You guys, I'm sorry. But my ex-husband is no longer here. I've got a restraining order against him. You might see the police show up. I know you have in the past, and I didn't tell you the truth about that, but you may see the police show up here. I had to get a firearm for the house, which, oh my God, don't even talk to me about it. I've never touched it. I actually never saw it. It was in a safe, and I never had to get it, thank God. But yeah, listen, I raised my hand and said, yeah, go ahead, judge away, guys. My life is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Have you guys seen Curb Your Enthusiasm where he says that? I love Larry David. Anywho, so that's it. You guys, I wouldn't take it back for a second, because you know what happened? People showed up. They showed up with lasagna. They showed up to babysit my kids. They showed up to sit on my couch and just listen. They showed up with flowers. They showed up by walking my kids from the bus stop to the house when it wasn't safe for me to walk outside my front door. They gathered mail for me. They showed up. And I'm talking people that I didn't really know. I thought for sure they would judge me. For sure they would take pleasure in my disaster of a life right now. Nope. No, they didn't. They felt really bad for me and my kids. And they were the most loving human beings. And some of them I still exchange Christmas cards with. So it's amazing when you hit rock bottom and you are willing to be honest about what is really going on in your life. And of course, that honesty has to begin with you. You have to begin with being honest with yourself. You have to begin with being honest about how you're being lied, how you're being swayed and manipulated. You have to be honest about who you're dealing with. Who are you in love with, right? And then you don't judge yourself for it. You go, this doesn't make me a loser. This makes me one of the most compassionate, empathetic human beings on this earth. This makes me such a good, loving friend and mother. I've just used my love and empathy in someone who can't reciprocate it back. And I just need to transfer that love and empathy and compassion to somebody who's more healthy, who will take a moment to give it right back to me as I deserve, right? Anyways, that was like 10 podcasts into one. I went on a roll today. How long did we go? This is 45 minutes. So that's it. I'm going to end there. Hopefully, you found something, one or two things in there that can help you this week. What my goal is just to say to you, I'm absolutely here. I have got your back 110%. And listen, I do this not because I want to be famous or because I want to get on Oprah or because I want to be some wildly popular person and personality. I'm an incredibly private person. I get nervous every time I go to record a podcast, and I love my small little life that I curated since leaving my ex-husband. I don't have many friends, but the friends I have are really good, and I invest in them a lot. I have an incredibly private, small life, and I love it. And the only reason why I do this every week is because I want to help you. I want to be there for you. I needed this podcast when I was going through this. And I'm not going to give up on you. I'm not going to sit there and say, I'll be here. You can listen for years past. If you go away from this podcast, that's okay. I'll still be here when you come back. You know, I'm not saying I'm going to do this forever and ever and ever. I'm sure there'll be an end date. But what I am saying, though, is that this podcast will always be available. I will be available to you. And I believe in you. And there is zero judgment. You take what you want from this and you leave the rest. And if you disagree, that's okay with me too. It's totally fine. All right. I love you very, very, very much. I think about you every day. And you are definitely not alone in this journey. Ooh, I just used the word journey. I hate that word. You are not alone in this phase of your life. Does that sound good? You're not alone at this moment in time. That actually sounds bad because then it makes you sound like you're alone later on in another moment in time. You get it. You know what I mean? You're not alone. All right. I'll talk to you next week. Bye. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.